Top of the morning folks, today from the Reddit Rainforest. What's the worst thing you have ever done? My best friend and his father were in a car accident 5 years ago. We were both 16. His dad was declared dead at the scene and he ended up in a coma for 12 weeks. I spent a lot of time at the hospital and his house, and as a result, his mom. A couple of weeks after the accident she just broke down completely as she was driving me home from the hospital. She told me she could not be alone that night and begged me to stay with her for a couple of hours. We went back to the house and she poured me a glass of wine. I lost my virginity to her, while my friend's life was hanging in the balance. His dad just buried. I was ducking his mom. I had always had a thing for her. I mean, she was my friend's hot mom. So I obliged every time she instigated, which was a lot. This stopped immediately after he was released from hospital and we avoid each other now. When we were 10, my best friend and I were always bullied by this kid who lived in our complex. He was one of those sneak bullies too, who acted so lovely around adults, but was a holy terror when they were not around. So one day, after he held my friend down and made him eat dog malarkey, we hatched a plan to put him out of commission. We found a Windex bottle and filled it with a bunch of different cleaning agents, one of them being bleach. Then we went looking for him. When we found him, he asked my friend if he was still hungry and wanted some more. And when he came over to us, I squirted him right in the face with the bottle. A good few squeezes worth. He ended up going to the hospital with chemical burns and lost all of the sight in one eye and partial sight in the other. He Facebooked me a few years back and apologized for how he had treated us and actually thanked me for what we did to him. He said it was a real eye-opener. His pun, not mine. And he now works exclusively with blind children and says it's incredibly rewarding. I grew up very poor with dysfunctional parents in a rural area. My siblings and I often went hungry. As the oldest, I always tried to look after them. But one day I failed hard. When I was 7 and my little brother was 5, I was playing outside and he appeared with a bologna sandwich that he had somehow scraped together from what he could find in the kitchen. It was just a single piece of meat onto squished pieces of dried bread. No cheese, no condiments, nothing else. When I saw what he had, in a fit of jealousy, I knocked it out of his little fingers onto the ground. He immediately burst into tears and started bending down to pick it up off the ground. Before he could pick it up out of the dirt, the local pack of stereotypical dogs that a poor rural family keeps pushed him over and ate the sandwich. He just lied there on the ground, covered in dust, crying and repeating over and over, "I made it to share with you. I am now 30, and we have a close relationship. But not a day goes by that I do not think about what I did on that one day out of petty jealousy. I want to apologize, but I really am hoping that he does not, or will not remember it." To sum it up, I destroyed the food of my sibling in a starving situation. Update: I talked to him this weekend while working on our cars. He said that he did not remember it. He made such light of the situation that I could not even start to explain how sorry I was about it without seeming overly dramatic. I do feel better though. I'm a big guy, 62, 280 pounds, bearded. I was walking through the mall one day and went to hitch up my pants. I chose to do that. However, at the exact time that a small Hispanic woman was walking by with her baby in her arms, I accidentally elbowed that baby right in the face. The woman, very timidly, said "Lo siento," and ran off in the opposite direction. I was walking downtown one night after leaving the bar, around midnight-ish, and I had to walk a few blocks to my car. Parking is awful in the city on a Friday night. Well, halfway there when there was not anyone around, someone comes up behind me, taps me on the shoulder, and tells me to give him my wallet, or it will be bad, as he had his hand deep in his pocket. I do not know if he had a gun on him, but all I could think about was getting stabbed or shot, which I really did not want to go through. So I preempted him, reached for my wallet, and grabbed my knife, put my hand in his face, and stabbed him in the stomach 3 times, and ran as hard as I could for probably a mile. Never told anyone. Never called the cops, as it seemed like that would put me in a worse spot. No idea what happened to him. To sum it up, probably stabbed a guy to death. My half-sister, who lived with her father in another state, died of a brain tumor when I was 17 and she was 15. The tumor pressed on her vocal cords, causing her voice to be very high-pitched and breathy. For the last 6 months of her life, I refused to speak with her on the phone because her voice reminded me of her. At the time, untreatable cancer, and, at the time, inevitable death. This was in 1987, and I still hate myself for it. To sum it up, Blew off my dying sister, who I love very much. Too scared to speak. At laser tag I accidentally knocked down a little girl when we collided while rounding a corner. Instead of helping her up, I shot her for the points and ran away. I was 11 years old. Asked my grandma who was raising me to buy me an Oreo McFlurry from Dairy Queen while she was running errands. She didn't want to because it was out of her way. I persisted and she continued to say no. 2 hours later she came back and stopped her car at the end of the driveway and paused for a while, like she was going to back up and do more errands. I came out to see what was up and she rolled the window down and handed me an Oreo McFlurry with the biggest smile on her face. I took it and threw it down on the lawn because I was a hyper prick and was pissed that she said no earlier. I remember her smile going to a WTF face after I threw it. She died of cancer a year later. I'm 24 now, and to this day, that is my saddest memory ever. She chose to raise me after she had already brought up her own kids and was the best person ever. I'm so sad. This is the first thing that come to mind when I think about her. Peas. I'm a piece of malarkey. I miss you, ma'am. Sorry. Living in abroad in Australia, I had sex with my German co-worker who had a boyfriend. She was in the country for 3 years on a domestic partnership visa and only had to stay for 6 more months to get full permanent residency. When her boyfriend found out, he broke up with her and alerted immigration. He was her visa sponsor. She was deported back to Germany. To sum it up, I ducked my co-worker and got her deported. I was walking a big city in an area unfamiliar to me an evening this summer, a few hours before sundown. It was in a residential area, about a 20-minute walk from the city center. There wasn't a whole lot of people on the street and only a little bit of traffic. Now, on to the actual event. As I walk, a car drives by me and turns in on a street I just passed. The car is going faster than is safe, and I hear a young woman screaming something from the half-open passenger door. I think crazy assholes to myself and keep walking, as did everyone else who was out. It was only later that night, when I thought back on it, that I realized something. The woman had screamed help. I was mortified. The fact that neither I nor anyone else on the street did a single thing to help her made me feel sick. As far as I know, no one checked up on the situation. No one called the cops. No one did anything. The worst thing is I have no idea what happened to the girl. She could have been victim of a kidnapping for all I know. Duck. I was climbing a tree with my friend when we were in 1st grade. I was the better tree climber as he was sort of a inside all the time kind of kid. For some reason I thought it would be awesome to pee from the top of the tree. While peeing I thought it would be awesome to pee on him. So I did. Just a few months ago I went on a road trip with the wife and kids. On the way back my son made us take an emergency potty break. When I got out to get him out of the car I found a wallet on the ground. I picked it up, got back in the car and opened it up. Has several credit cards, SS card, bank card, DL. $879 and several other items. Looked the guy up on FB and sent him a friend request with a message saying I found his wallet. Fast forward about 2 weeks. Do not hear from him. Contact his relatives. They have him call me. Guy wants me to bring it to him. A 1.5 hour ride away. I tell him it's not possible. I'm too busy. He says that's ducked up, bro. I say sorry, but I can meet you halfway this weekend. Guy says cool. He then tells me he does not remember how or when he lost it because he was ducking hammered. Fast forward to the weekend. I arrive at the location he decided on and wait for him for over 30 minutes. He finally calls and says, my bad bro. I was at the bar with my friends and forgot about you. He'll be there in about 10 minutes. 45 minutes later he shows up. Walk up to me and says, one secretary bro. I gotta piss. He is obviously intoxicated. Makes me wait while he goes into piss. For some reason my inner voice said duck this guy. So I took the money out of the wallet. Just seconds later he walks up and I hand him his wallet. He says thanks, snatches it from my hand and leaves. And I do not feel bad at all. Not one bit. To sum it up. Found the guy's wallet. He was a dick. Took his $879. Feel good about it. I'll let a man die that I could have saved. Next time someone tells you they're going to kill themselves, consider discreetly getting them help by any means. This was about 20 years ago, so it's been a while. I grew up in New York. The school I went to had about 3 white kids, 2 Hispanic and 2,300 or so black students. I was one of the white kids. I was a typical inner city child. Listened to punk, skateboarded and all that. I got jumped. A lot. To the point where I eventually left school. but this story is one of the reasons I left. So there were twins at the school. Let's call them John and Jonte. They always picked on me. I guess having a mohawk and liking the dead Kennedys was enough to lump me in with skinheads. So all the white kids at the school were labeled as skinheads. Even though none of us were. I was standing in front of my locker getting books and both of them snuck up behind me. I felt a really hard slap on the side of my head where it was shaved, and the pain was actually pretty intense. I turned around to fight whoever just hit me only to see those two and about 15 other kids. The principal was standing on the other side of these kids with a smirk on his face. I could do nothing except mutter, "You'll get yours." Alone. It was later on that day when I got my chance. I saw John walking towards the stairs. It was a 3-story school and we were on the top floor. I lost all self-control as the anger hit me and I ran at him full speed. I actually jumped and hit him with both feet in his back and the back of his head right as he hit the top of the stairs to go down. He flew the entire 15 stairs or so and hit his head on the wall. He was completely knocked out. I could faintly hear the screams as I flew down the stairs to him. People were telling me to stop. Even though I spent years of getting my ass handed to me by these guys and never being able to fight them one-on-one. This was my first chance. I hit the landing where his body was laying and I jumped in the air and landed both feet on his head. That sound is something I will never forget. From what I understand, he had surgery from that. I ended up in a boys' home as well because of it. But to this day I feel incredibly malarkey that I ever did this to him. It just goes to show what can happen if you spend so long getting physically abused by people and not having adults who are willing to intervene. Before you say I'm absolutely horrible for this. This happened 2 years earlier. I was skating home with some friends. We were on the road and who walks out of a store but the twins. They see me and my friends and the first thing John, the one I drop kicked, threw a full Snapple bottle at me. It hit me right in the nose and shattered the bridge of my nose. They actually ran while my friends scrambled to chase them down and see if I was alright at the same time. My childhood was a mess. While my uncle was dying in a hospice unit I was jerking off next to him. It was my turn to stay for the night. I was bored and had a laptop with a decent Wi-Fi connection and one thing led to another. After I cleaned up I noticed the room was really quiet and checked his pulse and called the nurse to tell him he had died. I still feel terrible. The Reddit Rainforest would like to ask you to like the video if you are enjoying it so far and subscribe if you have not already. I banged my ex-GF of 3 years. We had been broken up for 3 years at this point too. For around 6 months, while she was engaged. She needed to make sure she did not love me anymore and my penis was in control. 5/10 old, not engage in adultery again. I was at Dave & Buster's heading back to my friends with a huge mug of beer in my hands. An oblivious little girl runs right towards me. Her head equal level to my mug. I barely avoid her spilling a good splash of beer in the process. I yell, "Hey," and turn around to further chastise the little girl. She looks back at me and trips. Falling, then wham, the little girl that was chasing the first girl runs smack into my mug. The whole ducking thing empties on her head. 2 little girls are on the floor crying hysterically, one drenched in beer. Their parents were then in a flash. The first thing that came out of my mouth is, "You guys owe me a new beer." Duck places that mix a bar scene with Chucky. Cheese. Welcome to the end of the video. Do not worry, there are many more. Come aboard for more adventures. Like and subscribe for more posts from the Reddit Rainforest. Thanks for watching.